Oh yeah, it is now. Thanks, Luis. Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. You know, it's not easy to get me cold in a room. I run pretty hot. But that's okay. I can do this. V'hakimoti et briti. L'hakim is to raise up, in this case, establish my covenant. God says these words to Avraham this week, to Abraham, and it's kind of a meet cute. If you know, if it's a movie term, God and Avraham meet, and they fall in love, and they establish a brit, a covenant. So that's great. Awesome. That just leaves one question. What is a covenant? So, got a lot of wise people here, a lot of smart people here. What is a covenant? A contract. That was the word I was waiting for. That was not planned, I promise. It's an agreement between two people. But it's not a contract. It's different. And the question is, how is it? Yes. A promise, but isn't a contract a promise as well? Is to what? I'm sorry? Uh-huh. Stars in the sky. Yeah. So, yeah. It never ends. A perpetual contract. Okay. So, can a person, if it's perpetual, if it's always, can a person enter into one? Because guess what? We're not perpetual. We're not eternal. And we enter into a covenant. There's a covenant that many of you are entered into, and the symbol of it is on your hand. It's on this finger, probably. Right? That is considered a covenant. When we enter into a covenant, we separate ourselves out. Right? Contract is similar. But the difference is relationship. The sanctity of the relationship. In a contract, it's quid pro quo. I give you, you give me. I give you service X, you give me Y amount of money. Right? Any covenant that's built on that same thing, any marriage or any relationship that's built on I give you, so you give me, and the balance is always, that's pretty precarious. The relationship is the difference. Right? We enter into these mini ones all the time. Some of you may know of the phrase, I, thou, by Martin Buber, right? So a covenant is an I, thou relationship, meaning I am who I am, and I see you as a person. You've got your own beauty and dignity and divinity in you, and you are not just a means to an end. The opposite is I, it. I need a ride to the airport. Will you give me a ride? You are my it. My Uber driver, my friend that I suckered into it, right? There comes an age, by the way, where stop asking your friends to help you move, drive to the airport, and do those kinds of things, right? Like hire movers and get an Uber. Don't make them your I, it. A covenant implies or demands an I-thou relationship. Meaning you exist not just for my benefit, but for your own dignity, your own beauty, your own benefit. And these covenants that we enter into demand a relationship. And God and Avraham demand a relationship. We'll read next week, actually, we'll read of God's questioning God's self. If it's hard to use the same pronoun. If God questions God's self, if God is living up to the covenant. When God decides to destroy Sodom, beforehand, God says to God's self, I know, imagine if there were a drinking game where every time I said the word God, you'd be plastered. God, not you guys. God says, can I do this without telling Abraham? I have a responsibility to tell him. There are responsibilities we have to each other. And we enter into these covenants. And by the way, yes, marriage is one of them. But there are more. One that we've forgotten, that we've changed into an I-it relationship, is our relationship to our community. Our relationship to our community should be an I-thou covenant. Not what can you do for me, and if I don't like it, I'm gone. Right? I'm going to say 4 words. I can't count. I'm going to say 4 words that are going to scare the bejesus out of all of the board members here. Politics from the Bema. Right? Exactly. Right? It's Home Alone. It's terrifying. It's the new horror movie. The problem isn't politics from the Bema. The problem is our reaction to it. And this is where relationship comes in. Can I still have a relationship with someone who disagrees with me? Think about that for a second. Can I have a relationship with someone with whom I disagree? The answer should be an obvious yes, but it's getting harder and harder. We forget our relationships, our covenants with family members and friends, and we use all these different litmus tests into whether or not we allow them to remain in our covenant. Relationships are crucially a part of this covenant. And our relationship to our community, guess what? I promise you, I'm going to disappoint you. CBI is going to disappoint you. Your community will disappoint you. Your spouse will disappoint you. For a very basic reason. We're human. Nobody lives up to our expectations. Let me ask you this. You don't have to answer this out loud, but have you lived up to all of your expectations of yourself your entire life? If you answer yes, you may want to get checked for narcissism. No one, including ourselves, by the way, we have a covenant with ourselves, and we should. Nobody lives up to our expectations all the time, and that's where we must rely on the relationship to keep it going. Because, by the way, the place I started this, the covenant between God and the Jewish people, we get let down, and God lets us down, and we let God down all the time. The golden calf, right? We are not without sin. Because we're human. I remember studying the sin of the golden calf in the commentaries many, many years ago. I was at my friend's house, and we were studying the Rashi, who's an 11th century super commentator, they call him. Right? This is way before Marvel. But Rashi was kind of one of the first. And Rashi said that the people behind the golden calf were the people that weren't originally Jews. They were called the Erev Rav, the riffraff who came from Egypt. And we were like, oh, great, little xenophobic answer, little, ethnocentrism. Couldn't be the Jews. Has to be these other people. And we were going over this and hashing it out, and his wife came in the room, his wife who had converted to Judaism, and she says, that's not xenophobic. It makes total sense. I said, what do you mean? She said, because when you're scared, which the Bnei Israel was when they made the golden calf, you revert back to what you know. When we are scared, that's when we're most apt to make mistakes, and that's when the covenant comes in. When we're scared, when we're going through transitions, when we're going through changes, that's when things get dicey. And that's when we have to double down on the relationship. Whether it's our spouse, our sibling, or our community. Things, when they're shifting, gets tenuous. Here's how important relationships are. If you did a poll of any shul, any non-Orthodox shul in the United States, and you asked people, which are you more likely to celebrate, Valentine's Day or Shavuot? you'd get a very, very large majority that if they don't celebrate Valentine's Day, at least has a conversation about why or why not. Whereas Shavuot, oh, it was Shavuos last week? Oh. Because of relationship. Because Valentine's Day is about the relationship that you share with someone. Shavuot, we can bemoan, oh, nobody's in shul. But the reason they're not is because they don't feel the relationship. And that's where it's on us as a community to create relationships amongst ourselves and with Judaism. I said last week, Avraham brought people in. That's our job, as those sitting in the seats, as those invested in the community. Our job is to create a covenant, which, by the way, means I can't just see you as somebody filling a seat. I have to see you as an I-thou. I have to see your humanity, your divinity, your dignity, and meet you where you are, not where I want you to be. Any relationship that's dependent on you being what I expect you to be, right? Mimi knows what I'm talking about. And when we do this, when we enter into these small covenants, these small moments, we create these circles around us, right? Picture a rock going into a pond and the circles ripple out, right? The covenant we have with ourselves. Am I holding my end of the bargain up with me? Am I the person I want to be? Am I kind when I'm not? Right? Sometimes I'm kinder to other people when they make mistakes than I am to myself. That's breaking our own covenant with ourselves. Because any patience or tolerance that's not built on self-compassion is a house built on a poor foundation. So it starts with us, this covenant. And then it goes to our immediate loved ones, our concentric circle, then our community. And when we're able to do those, we can be that Or LaGoyim, right? Avraham brought all these people in. He was a light among the nations. We can't do that if we're not solid in our covenant. And a covenant isn't about what do you give back. It's about being in this relationship. It's a word we use all the time, covenant. Not one we always think about. And so it's my hope and my prayer that this week, make a covenant for yourself. L'hakim, to establish a covenant with you, with your loved one. And this week and this month and this year, build on those. Build on those covenants. And we too here at CBI will do the same. Because there's a great quote. Judaism without love is archaeology. I would say that Judaism without covenant, or any religion without covenant, is archaeology or history. So may we find that love, may we find that covenant with ourselves, with our loved ones, and with the rest of the nation. Shabbat Shalom.